Women's Network Q&A live stream. I've got 5 other guests with me today. I will allow them to introduce themselves. We will be talking about topics around women's health and being a woman with dyspraxia. You can ask your questions in the chat box and we will happily answer as many as we can. Try and get a cat out of the way. I will allow you guys to introduce yourself. We'll start off with Rosemary and I'll let you go through each one.
All right, so I am Rosemary. I am a freelance writer and author, originally from Toronto, Canada, but currently I'm living in Morocco.
Hi, I'm Kaylee. I'm a social work master's student in the UK.
Hi, my name is Muskan. I'm from India. I'm dyspraxic, autistic, I have sensory processing disorder, maladaptive daydreaming disorder, and a few mental illnesses.
Hi, my name's Jill. I'm now retired, but most of my career was in youth work.
Okay, my name is Joelle. I'm just turned 21, and I was diagnosed with dyspraxia when I was 8. And at this moment, I'm a journalism student, and also from next week, I am a freelancer, journalist. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for introducing yourselves. So one of the first topics that we will go into today is, let me pick and choose. So we'll go with gender stereotyped responsibilities. So gender stereotypes say that women are the providers and givers of all the households, does all the cooking and cleaning, but obviously being dyspraxic, that makes things difficult. I don't know about you guys, but in my household, those roles are reversed. I do all the handiwork and my partner does all the cooking. Anyone else relate with that?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, my husband is definitely the cook of the household, and I do most of the cleaning up and laundry and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think once someone's watched us as dyspraxic people try to cook and make a good amount of mess, they tend to decide to take over for themselves, so it's fine.
Yeah, I think for me it is like I'm from a woman household, so I grew up with my sister and 2 divorced moms. So I was like the person that didn't cook at home, but now I'm out of home. Like I do it all by myself as far as I can. I get prepared meals for my mom sometimes. Yeah, I can be honest, but I'm not ashamed of that. Like I'm not the best at cooking, but I'm trying.
I wouldn't say I'm a complete and utter chaos, but I have offered to cook for people and managed to upset them nearly every time. Things like I will make a frittata and forget to actually cook the potatoes beforehand. Yeah. So they're eating raw potatoes. Not great. Doesn't do friendships much good, but we're still there, so that's okay.
That's okay, Jill. I burnt quite a few inanimate objects in the kitchen by accident.
I cook to live, if that makes sense. I can cook enough to make food so that I can survive, and that's enough. Yeah. I'm not particularly interested.
No.
No. Shall I say? Actually, in my case, it's like I self-diagnosed or rather self-explored my dyspraxia. But when I tried to tell my parents about it, they invalidated, they denied it, and they were like, no, there is nothing. You just read about something and you think that you have it. It happens if you read about something for a lot of time. So they invalidated. No, they will not accept that I'm dyspraxic. And I mean, any of my disabilities, they will not accept a single one of it. And one benefit that I've had all my life is that I mean, not I actually, my mother always used to make me study a lot in childhood, so I've always been good at studies. So I can make an excuse that, oh well, I'm studying. That's the only excuse I can make to get away from household chores now. So I get away from household chores with this specific excuse. Uh, but sometimes when I cook, it's my mother teaching me how to cook, and they have their neurotypical ways. They will not make space for us to uh, like. They will not repeat instructions a lot. Will be a little impatient with us. All of these things are there, and there are certain things in cooking that I seriously don't understand, and like I do not remember recipes even after making something 5-6 times or something. So it's a whole mayhem sort of a thing for me while cooking.
Yeah.
I think it stands out as well more being female, doesn't it? Because for some reason, like growing up, both my bedroom was really messy and my brother's bedroom was really messy. But straight away, people very much noticed. My brother isn't dyspraxic, and straight away, people noticed Kaylee's bedroom's really messy. For a girl, her bedroom's really messy. She's very dirty for a girl. Like she's very cluttered for a girl. Whereas they didn't really even notice my brother's or pick up on it at any point. So I think that's a big gender divide there as well, isn't it? People tend to notice. If I was like, I'm rubbish at hoovering. I'm rubbish at trying to like work around like tables and chairs and things and hoovering. I'm rubbish at that sort of spatial awareness. And I think if like a boy or a young man's rubbish at hoovering, it tends to just be, oh, he can't hoover. He doesn't like to hoover. But it seems to be a big deal when we're really bad at it. And people tend to go, oh, excuse of dyspraxia. And you're like, no, I really can't work it out. I don't know what I'm doing.
You really have to focus and practice.
Is a good excuse.
Sorry.
I'll let you go.
Yeah, you really have to focus and practice with all the little chores things. There's so many tiny little details, and I think a lot of people that aren't used to dyspraxia, they don't realize that. They take that for granted.
Yeah, sure. I mean, a lot of the time, like when I say like I'm just learning things, like I'm 6 weeks out of like my parents' home, they don't understand that I can't do everything already. Like people say like you can do it, like learn it in a day, and it's like I think it will take me a year or a year and a half to learn some things like that. I can do it clearly without like instruction, and like people don't understand that, and sometimes that annoys me really.
I think it's having the patience to do things as well. Don't have patience. Growing up, I was always called a tomboy because I didn't do girly things, but then I was forced into liking girly things. Like it was a bad thing to not like them. So like wanting to do my hair and makeup when I was younger, I was called a boy, a tomboy, and like almost mocked for not wanting to do those and being forced into them. Like I was constantly being bought like hair and makeup kits, even though they would always go to waste. And then it got to the point where I started using them because then people were praising me. It was like, oh wow, that's so good. And like I wouldn't cook because my wrist, like with hypermobility in my wrist, I struggle with holding like pots and pans. Like that really hurts me. Like if I have to use a wok or something, I've got to pour it out. Like I can't do that. I have to have someone else do that for me. But because I couldn't do that, it's like, oh, you're such a boy, you're such a tomboy. It's like, what? Because I struggle with one thing. Like it's okay for guys not to do that. Like where is this coming from? Like we're all human beings. We all should have the same expectations, but they're not. And if you don't have those, you're mocked for them. And it's just like, regardless of your abilities or lack of abilities, it's just like, like it's frowned upon. Like it's not okay. It's just like, I'm not a cook. I'm never going to be a cook. The world needs to accept that. Like I can't manage timing. I will burn everything, and I can't hold heavy things because of the hypermobility in my wrists. It is what it is.
You've survived this long, you'll be fine.
Yeah, I'll be fine. Microwave meals and takeaways and food that other people have made me. It's great.
Yeah.
If that's what you need to survive, that's what you need to survive. There is nothing wrong with it. So long as you're eating healthy at the end of the day.
Yeah.
It's fine.
And also, while we're on the gendered stereotype part, recently we had a discussion on the group where someone was saying like they were really struggling to manage the housework with being dyspraxic. But when we actually started discussing it, there was like 6 of them in the house and they were the only person doing the housework. and because it was like mum, they expected that she would be able to do it all. And I was sort of saying, even ignoring the dyspraxic aspect for a minute, you have 6 adults in your house who are able to be involved and do the housework. So I think the gender stereotypes on that make it a lot worse in that side as well, because forgetting the dyspraxia part, why is it on her anyway?
Yeah, it shouldn't be. It's unfair, and it's the whole weaponized incompetence thing, which has been talking about a lot recently, which I'm very thankful for, because I've experienced a lot of it in the past, where my ex-partner used to purposely mess things up, like would purposely, and it's like, I've seen you do these things perfectly when you don't think I'm around, but when you know I'm watching, you're purposely doing them bad so that I tell you not to do it, so that they can get out of doing things. And it's just like, if a woman did that, my God, we would never hear the end of it, because we're expected to do those things. And again, when you've got a household, like you said, of 6 people, but they're expecting the one woman who lives there to do it all, it's just not fair.
No. It was something that kept coming up when I was doing youth work, and young people would say, oh, I've never learned, I don't know how to make a cup of tea. And I'd turn around and say, it's about time you learned then, isn't it? And they were like, oh, what, you're not going to make me a cup of tea? No, I'm not going to make you a cup of tea. I'll teach you how to do it, and then you can make me a cup of tea.
That is a very, very good way of doing it. Right, let's move on to our next topic. This one I think is really important, which is workplace discrimination, especially as dyspraxic women. The workplace is somewhere that we will often spend most of our time at, apart from when we're at home. So I think it's very important that we have a good work-life balance and know what to do and how to recognize what workplace discrimination is, because casual sexism is everywhere. You don't always notice it, and obviously ableism as well is rife within most workplaces. So I guess we could start off with discussing examples of what that looks like and experiences.
Yeah. I would like to start. Like one of the first things, like I had not a lot of jobs like that I like have to work with other people. Like the only job I had was like when I was 16 and I worked like at a supermarket. And then the first thing they start to notice is like you're not like as fast as the others. And this was also like something that I had at my internship, like you have to go faster, or you like, or like your motor skills, like with like setting things up. And what I was noticing that I had discrimination at my internship was like I had said to my teacher that like guided me like, yeah, I have dyspraxia and I'm also being tested for autism. So yeah, I maybe act different than maybe other people you had like as your learning students in your like classroom. So yeah, that was when I after that I said that to her, she was like acting different than she did before. And it had been so far that I was sent away from that internship. So yeah, that is like you see that discrimination happen because you say I might have a disability. It turned out I didn't even had autism. I have like traits that cross with dyspraxia, so that's the reason I couldn't get diagnosed. So yeah, I'm still mad about that incident from my internship.
I'm not surprised.
Yeah.
I've had similar things with customer service jobs where I'm exhausted largely because of my dyspraxia, and I'm getting more serious and having to focus more. And there's always, they don't get on at the men about this, but there's always a real sense of people pressuring you to be the smiley, cheery, good appearance one, but they never, I always noticed for some reason the men that were doing the same position, they would never be asked any of these things and it wouldn't even matter. But like, I didn't realize how strange that was until years later.
My first job was in the civil service, and we were expected to wear skirts and blouses and tights or stockings, etc., and be women, girly women. And as a tomboy, that didn't really sit very well with me, but I had to go with it. And that's why I think I came later on to youth work, because our only uniform there was a hoodie or a fleece or whatever, and jeans and trainers usually. So that was fantastic, except when you had to go and meet your bosses, and then you were expected to dress up properly. But yeah, the amount of sex, I mean, bearing in mind I'm a lot older than most of you, but the sexism that was around then was absolutely horrendous. Men come and touching you and intruding into your space, and the comments that were made in respect of what you have to deal with today, it was a lot worse. So things have improved, but they're still not good enough.
No, I've had similar issues to some extent when I was working in retail. We had to stand all day, and the only time you were allowed to sit is when you were serving a customer. Now, I explained to them I have dyspraxia and I struggle with, my hypermobility, and standing still causes me problems. I need to be able to sit, otherwise I'll be in extreme amounts of pain. I didn't know at the time that I also had Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, which is where my joints are extremely weak. But you're forced to stand up, and it's like, oh, you're such a girl, you need to sit down and things like that. And it's like, no, I'm a human being with a body that doesn't like standing. It's not got anything to do with being a girl. And the other issues I faced was with customers. So it was a technical job, and I was one of the head technical people who, I'd been there for forever. I knew how to use the system. If something broke, I was the person people went to if the other person wasn't in. And quite often I would serve a customer and they'd say, I've got a technical issue. Have you got someone who can help with that? And I said, yes, I'm the one to help with you. And I've had people genuinely say, can I be served by a man? I don't want a girl to help me. You're not going to be able to do it. And I also struggled when I got flustered with my speech. So when I was younger, I had a really bad stutter because of my dyspraxia. And when I get stressed and worked up, it comes back. And people take that as being unintelligent. You're not an intelligent person if you can't get your words in the right order. And being dyspraxic anyway, I get my words in the wrong order anyway. I say my sentences backwards, but if I say them with enough enthusiasm, most people don't notice. But a lot of these guys would, and they would fluster me, and they would be like, no, I want to see a man. And I clearly want to see someone who knows what they're doing, because you don't. It's like, they haven't even helped me yet. So on some occasions, I would get one of my male colleagues and I would talk them through what they had to do, because they didn't have a clue what they needed to do. So it's like, there you are, you're being seen by a man, which you've asked for, but he hasn't got a clue what he's doing because he's only been here a couple of weeks. Or he just generally doesn't know the system. And it's just like, you're trying to fluster me, and you're thinking, because I can't speak as well as you hope I would, that I'm not intelligent and that I can't help you. And because I'm a woman, I don't understand how tech works. And a lot of the time, they just had to turn their device off and on. The amount of times that fixes everything. Literally every time we used to do a bet. What are you going to bet this is an off and on situation? Before you even spoke to the customer, 9 times out of 10, they just had to turn it off and on. And they come in, rant and rave, and I want to see a man. I've got a technical issue. So,
Adding to the intelligent aspect of the discussion, similarly, when I was working in retail at one point, they asked me to fold some boxes. I can't do it. I can't fold boxes. I can't make nets into shapes. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm never going to. That's not what I'm going to do with my life. I can't do it. But they kept asking me. And because I was trying to explain, I think the lack of awareness around dyspraxia doesn't help either. But when I was trying to explain that there's no way I can do this, they just very, very slowly and in simple words explain to me how to fold a box. And it's really irritating, because I understand how to fold a box. I get the theory behind what you're saying. I'm not struggling with intellect. I just can't physically fold this box, but they don't get it. and
No.
people just tend to speak very slowly to you, or as if you're a child. You get that quite a lot as well. People treat you as if you're a child, and you're like, no, I understand what you're saying. I'm just not going to be able to do whatever it is.
Yeah.
It's difficult.
Yeah, I will just go through. So I've mentioned this before in a stream. So I've actually gone through a few legal battles because of discrimination at work. One of them I can't talk about for legal reasons, which is just to highlight a lot of the time they will silence you. If you shout loud enough, they will try and silence you. And you have to make a decision, a resolution, if you want to continue to be treated badly, and it's a decision that you have to make, unfortunately, and oftentimes that result means you get silenced. But when you are in a situation where you think you're being discriminated against, learn what your rights are. I cannot stress that enough. I've been treated awfully by companies that I could have sued 100 times over, but I didn't know that I could, and I wasn't aware that I had rights in that place. Now, businesses won't even dare to treat me the way that they have done in the past, because I am confident in what my rights are and I make them quite aware of that. So if I start to notice I'm being discriminated against, I will speak up and say, that's inappropriate, please don't say that. And I will say it in a stern way that says, that may be a joke, but this isn't. I'm a human being, I have rights. Whereas before I would have gone, and then they would have continued doing it.
Yeah.
So learn what your rights are in the workplace. If anyone is ever unsure, you can send me a message on social media and I can help point you in the right direction. But having confidence in your rights definitely helps with your persona at work and how people treat you. Because without that confidence, people just walk all over you. It's a sad reality, but learn what your work rights are, please.
And also how to articulate how it affects you. And that's always the big hurdle that has to be overcome when you're just starting out and you're young. That can be really, really difficult.
It can really throw
I
you
think
back.
that's part of like the legal aspect of it, isn't it? But I'd say like personally as well, keep reminding yourself it's not you that's wrong. You're dyspraxic. You're gonna not be able to do certain things. You're going to struggle. If someone's discriminating against you, you aren't useless. You aren't struggling. It's them that's wrong, and it's them that need to change. So just keep reminding yourself like it's not you that's in the wrong here or at fault. There's some things you're not going to be able to do, and that's okay.
Yeah. I'm old school, so I joined the union. I think it was in the first year I was in youth work, and it's been an absolute, education for me to actually get involved actively in the union and become an activist. It was a real eye-opener, and it's amazing what goes on behind the scenes. But you choose your battles.
I think, Muskan, were you going to add something to that? Oh, I think you're on mute.
Yeah.
Sorry. Actually, I'm a student. I have not entered a workplace yet. Oh.
Fair enough. Okay.
Right, let's go to our next one. Ableism in academic institutes. This can be a difficult one because academic institutes are meant to be a place of free learning for everyone. It's meant to be a discrimination-free place. It's meant to be equal opportunities for everyone. Even if there is a disabled service for students who have disabilities, that doesn't mean that they're necessarily an institute that will help. I know Muskan is going through a few issues at the moment, so I'll let you take off on this one.
Yeah, well, actually, in my university, we do have some policy for disabled students, but the criteria is that number one, you should be professionally diagnosed, which is not an issue if you are on campus because the university doctors can also diagnose you. But second issue, it should be with the signature of your parents. That is, your parents should know that you are taking some help from the university under this policy. And that I feel is really weird, considering they usually say that we are, young adults, we can take our own decisions. They don't need to call our parents to punish us or something. But why do they need to call our parents to get us a disability service? I mean,
Hmm.
do they think of disabled students as children or what? That's seriously. And then I'm self-diagnosed, so you can understand. And like, I'm multiply neurodivergent. There are a lot of issues I face in academics, even though I've always been like good in studies. I'm hyperlexic. I have a lot of the readings that we are supposed to do when they have, let's say, a high vocabulary, a lack of any sort of diagrams or pictures, too much of high vocab text. It just all goes over my head whenever I'm reading it. And I'm sure that dyslexic people and people with other learning disabilities would also have been facing issues with the same thing. And the university doesn't do anything about it. They are just like, a lot of their course packs are in hard copy. And even when they upload the soft copy, the text is not accessible. So it's not like I can select the text, copy it, paste it into a Word file, change the font according to how I want it. None of that can happen. They are like, oh, you people are lazy, you people want to learn only from PPTs. They give these kind of answers. It's really, really ableist.
Hmm.
Yeah, see, I've been quite lucky. My like personal supervisor was always brilliant and pretty good with things, but that's definitely not the case all around. We definitely had people with additional needs which weren't met in any way, shape, or form throughout university. And I think for some reason as well, I think the general consensus is that people with additional needs or learning difficulties probably won't make it to university. So they don't educate people in this, which is so silly because it's nothing to do with academic ability in the slightest. But for some reason, the general consensus seems to be people probably won't go to university, so they don't tend to use that many inclusion techniques. There is people out there fighting, and I know my lecturer was one, but the general consensus doesn't tend to have the same view.
Yeah,
I was
sometimes
meant
it's
to get
just the
extra
rules.
time.
Yeah, sometimes it's just the rules themselves. I mentioned this on the previous stream we did earlier on the week, but I faced when I went to university, I faced a real challenge with paperwork, and I was diagnosed very young, and I found a copy of that paperwork, and they didn't see it as adequate. They tried to convince me to go and get some extremely expensive psychological assessment instead, and I knew what I needed, and it took a while for me to even find out that even just like going to my general practitioner was good enough, and that I could find a doctor's note.
Yeah, that was the same sort of issue with my university, where like my personal lecturer was fine, the systems don't work. There's a lot of like financial barriers as well. There's similar, if you wanted any sort of like additional help, or even for it to be officially on records, it was of an expensive diagnosis process to go even through the university. So for most people, or for me particularly, that was out anyway. That wasn't an option. So I think there's a lot of financial barriers as well, which is ableism within the institute itself.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the issues I dealt with, so my final piece, my written piece, my dissertation, that's what it's called, was about sexism within animated TV series. And my lecturer who was helping with it was a woman herself, but she was very much like in denial of sexism within animated TV series. So I focused on TV shows like The Simpsons, where Homer was allowed to be incompetent as ever. He was allowed to be a terrible father. He was allowed to be a terrible partner, you know, breaking things all the time, while his wife had to be this perfect woman, always available to him, perfect mother, did everything. But he was just brushed off because he was a man, and how, you know, he was expected to have certain things. And then TV shows where, you know, the men are big, man, muscly, they're like this really strong figure. Like if there was a smaller male character, he was weedy and weak, and, you know, he was the joke in that. And so the really toxic male stereotypes within animated TV shows. And she marked me down because she didn't agree with me. She didn't agree that those things existed. And I don't understand how that's legal. Pretty sure it wasn't. But in terms of that was just awful. But also, I was meant to have extra time for handing in my assignments and things. And what they weren't allowed to do was mark me down for them being late, as in not at the same time as everyone else. I had 3 extra days. They marked me down and capped my level. And they weren't meant to do that. And I tried so hard to think in it. And they were like, oh, but you have to have a certain disability. And I was like, I do. I got it done here. Here's the paperwork that you did. It's on my file. And they just ignored me. They never. So all that support that they supposedly give you, but then they mark you down for your reasonable adjustments that are reasonable, well within your rights. But yeah.
I always wish like that I had like extra assignment time, like for handing in papers. I only have like extra test time, and that's also not since like middle school. But I had like before I started to study journalism, I did like studying to become a teacher's assistant, and I got that degree. But it also was like first recognized that dyspraxia is a thing. Like my friend and I was like weird thing. He was like the first other dyspraxic person I met, and like it was so rare that even like it came in the curriculum, like to learn about dyspraxia. So that was like something that like I succeeded in, like to change like the school system in that way. That I'm pretty like happy about it. That is just as normal like as dyslexia and as like other disabilities we had to learn about. So that was like pretty happy that I could succeed that in my school.
I mean, if we look at like younger schooling, my whole time was not the best that way. I mean, people didn't pick up on dyspraxia, though I did have teachers singing songs like "She's Got No Strings to Hold Her Down" from Pinocchio when I was walking. So they very, very quickly like picked up on the fact that I'm clearly a mess of a person, but didn't seem to like link that with dyspraxia, which is strange and maybe down to the areas and things I grew up in. But again, probably lack of funding and lack of knowledge of dyspraxia itself. So I don't think the teachers really knew themselves what it was, even though it was very obvious. And like, even though they could pick out qualities for themselves, they couldn't quite make a diagnosis.
I was bullied loads by teachers. Especially teachers. They were like the main bullies that I dealt with that ended up causing the students to bully me. The comments that they would make about my inabilities to do stuff and being slow and called the R word and all sorts of other things by teachers when I was in primary school.
I was just singled out a lot.
Yeah.
And that was quite humiliating.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, when I went to regular school, it was like I didn't count like until I went to normal school like until the 3rd grade, and I had like to repeat like 1st or 2nd grade. So like I had 4 years on that school, and as I heard later from my mothers, like they said like you did it for nothing, like only because like we had like a waiting list to get tested, because like through my school system it was like 2 people could get tested for something like a disability twice, like 2 people per year. So like every year I was like not on the top of the list. And so like when I got diagnosed, like, and I went to like a special needs school, like you can say, in the beginning, like was one teacher, and my mother is still mad at her. Like she said that there's a chance I could not like proceed like in anything like grade, and now like I'm like in university, so like my mom says, yeah, you don't have to listen to teachers that much. Like in like what you want to do in life. I don't know if you have like some teacher who said that to you guys or something, that you couldn't do anything.
Yeah, I was told I wouldn't amount to anything, mostly because of my speech issues. Because again, they think your speech issues relate to intelligence, and well, my speech is relatively okay now, so joke's on them. All right, we'll move on to our next question, which is what products do you recommend for menstruation, which would be things like cups, period pads, etc. Would anyone like to kind of lead on this one, or should we all just each?
I don't really remember much about it. I'm too old.
Swap you.
One day.
Yes.
So I use, I've tried menstrual cups in the past.
That sounds like a nightmare for dyspraxia.
Literally, it's as you imagine how terrible it would be, that's how terrible it was. Like, this was back when they were first a thing. They weren't the best design. So removing one and cleaning one, like, especially if you're in a public place, you've not got anywhere to clean it. There's no sink. And no one's going to, like, waddle out with their pants around their ankles, just like, excuse me, just wash my menstrual cup, and like, you know, you put the tap on too fast, flies everywhere, bloodbath. Like, you don't want that in a public place. You don't dare go anywhere. You just stay at home all day. But yeah, I tried it like twice. It's in a cupboard somewhere, I think. Like after I'm boiling it and whatnot, it's just stayed in its little bag. I recently tried period pants. Which they sell in Primark at the minute for like £6 or £10 for a pack of 3 or something like that. And I also have endometriosis, which means I struggle with menstruation and like generally quite heavy and things like that. So one of them worked well for me. It was one for the heavy flow, but the other two were medium flow. They did not last very long. And you kind of expect to be able to wear pants for a long time without having to change them. But they were good. They were comfortable. They let you forget about it. There's no fiddling around with wrappers and things like that, which, like with the wrapper ones, they're folding in on themselves, and then you lose the stickiness, and it's too far one way or too far the other. Yeah. So I found they were pretty good. I recommend them. The menstrual cups, it's been a while. They've changed since. Probably not so dyspraxia friendly, but the period pants, they were pretty good.
See, with the menstrual cups, I can see all the positives, the environment things, the lack of plastic use, but it's just not going to work. Me as a dyspraxic person, and do you know what? If they're still using this amount of plastic in chewing gum, if companies are still doing all they're doing for climate-wise, I am not getting rid of tampons just because of this environmental ways when I can't use cups. It's not going to happen. So
I've been a pads person all the way, but it's only because it's what I've done all the way. I've had lots of practice, to say the least, and I mean it's easy. I'm very sensory sensitive, so at least it's not putting something up me, and so it's more comfortable.
Yeah, I agree. I definitely find pads much more comfortable with tampons. Like, again, if your cramps are really bad, inserting one can be really painful. Because like if it hits your cervix and your cervix is busy doing its thing, like dancing around and whatnot, you know, that can really hurt. But I guess that depends on, like, obviously I have endometriosis, so I've got all sorts of issues going on down there. But I find that the Always menstrual pads, they have a heart at the front. So you know that they're for the front, because that was the thing I always struggled with, is what goes at the front and what goes at the back, because they are a different shape. They're not just a rectangle.
They've started having good sort of visual cues about what goes where. And that's wonderful.
Yeah. And they've got the packets now that they come in, you can reuse them to seal up as well, whereas before they weren't. And obviously if you're out in a public place and they've not got a bin or something, you know, you've got all that faffing around, and you know, you want to be able to put it away neatly without causing like a mess anywhere. Friendly. It's just mastering the application side of things, which once you've got it, you've generally got it. But I still always mess up with the wings, but I would still prefer them over kind of anything else.
So yeah, I tend to find tampons easier that way. I find pads harder to like work out in my head, and on top of that, like tampons last longer and things. So I just find that easier.
Now, I'm actually from India, so we do not have most of the products you people are talking about. I mean, if they are there, they are not available in every place, and obviously they are very, very expensive. So when I was in first year in college, we had an assignment about the condition of girls in rural areas of India. I mean, like schoolgirls as well as women in rural areas and like women from lower economic backgrounds, about them and their issues with menstruation and sanitation. So while researching, we found out that in 2015, only 64 to 66% of females in India had access to menstrual pads, which disposable menstrual pads, which is the most basic product to find anywhere in the country. And now it's 2021, so things should have changed, but I don't know if the exact number is there yet. I mean, the statistics has been put up or not, but still 66. How much do you expect? Not more than 72, right? So that was very less. And then yes, in my own house also, I use menstrual pads, disposable ones. I've never tried using cloth pads because I think that maybe washing them would be hard of a task due to dyspraxia. And even my mother is not a big fan of trying other products and all. We just use menstrual pads, and I mean, menstrual cups and all are very expensive. Period pants is not something I'd heard of before today, to be honest.
They are new. They are a new product that are starting to become popular here. In terms of cleaning them, I've always been at home when I've worn them. I've never really gone out and worn them just because, again, I'm not comfortable with that concept yet. I don't have anything to put them in if I need to change them. But if I become more comfortable with them, I might invest in like a sealant bag of some sort. I've seen that you can get them. In terms of washing them, you just have to soak them in the sink and then wring them out, and then you put them in the wash. So unless you've got like a place where you can do that, that's not going to cause issues for other members of the household. I just use the sink in the bathroom, and I use a little bit of soap and then wring it dry and then shove it in the wash. So you're generally relying on a household that does washing every day. I don't do the washing every day. I do it like once or twice a week because there's only two of us in our household. So I generally, the last time I used them is I left a lot of washing so that I could do washing several days in a row, or like a small wash. So there's that to bear in mind as well, that there will be more washing to be done. So in terms of an environmental impact, it's kind of like you're doing more and smaller washes for the sake of it. But yeah, they are very new.
Sure.
Okay, we'll move on to our next subject. There we go. How did the menopause affect your dyspraxia, and how does it affect the body?
This is where we all look at you, Jill.
I know.
It's your time to shine.
Tell us about everything.
I don't think anything shined during menopause. I hit menopause when I was going through a really difficult patch at work, and it was about the third time that we'd had a restructure, and I was being micromanaged by my new boss, and I just came to the point where I just couldn't cope with it. So I walked away from my job, which was the hardest thing for me to do. But I felt I was going mad. I really did feel that I was absolutely bonkers, because I couldn't really hang a sentence together. I couldn't, in meetings, I would just sit there, shut my mouth, because I was having all sorts of feelings going through my body which weren't related to anything that was going on. Couldn't sleep at night. sweats and everything. It was just madness. And you do think, am I the only one that's going to? And then you start talking to people who've gone through it, and it's fairly normal, which is scary. So
see, I struggle with things like temperature and like certain like jumpers and clothing that way. So is that quite difficult during the menopause, with like hot sweats and things?
Yeah, I would be sitting in my living room, and I would, 1 minute I'd be hot, maybe the cat had been sat on my lap, and I'd be like, oh, get the cat off me, and then the next minute I'd be almost shivering. And I mean, it was like within 5 minutes, and there was it didn't seem to have any rhyme or reason. It was just happening, and you just have to go with what's happening at the time. And it's really scary, because all the things that you know about your body seem to be working against each other. It's really very odd.
So would that affect your dyspraxia as well? So when you're trying to like micromanage yourself and do things for yourself and like coordinate and processing, like thought processing as well, was that all completely thrown off?
It was absolutely I mean, my timing, my awareness of time went out of the window. My what do you call them? My emotions were up and down like a flipping seesaw. I could be in the middle of a meeting talking about something, and all of a sudden I'd want to cry. Not because of anything that was going on in the meeting, but just because my emotions were becoming overwhelming for whatever reason. And it just makes you feel completely mad.
Yeah. See, I find like my symptoms of like dyspraxia are worse a few days before I'm due on my period. Is that at all like the same with menopause? Is there anything really
PMS?
Yeah, I would say it just emphasize. Is that the right word? Emphasizes things, and it just blows them up out of your normal. Can't think of the word. Sorry, dyspraxia.
So we've got loads to look forward to then.
It depends how. I mean, I think because I didn't have any older women to talk to who I trusted, it wasn't really mentioned. So I just thought I was going mad, because I didn't realize I was the age to be going through it. And I had no one to talk to. So because this is now coming up into the awareness of everybody, it's fantastic, because you can talk about it with so many people. So many people I've met since I had menopause and managed to get through it have talked to me about it. And it's like it was similar to the feeling of finding out I was dyspraxic. It made sense afterwards, because people were coming up and explaining it to me, and I was asking questions. But at the time, I just thought, what the hell's going on?
I remember once researching a little bit into menopause, because I was having issues at one point where I was having issues with temperature, with my emotions. I was having a really tough time. And it was kind of in my last was when my endometriosis was starting to flare up, and I wouldn't find out what endometriosis was until 10 years after, but I was really struggling. And I remember researching it and thinking, oh my God, I'm going through early menopause. And it was all stress related, but that just kind of gave me a taste of like how taxing it is on your mental health.
Yeah.
Obviously I didn't experience it and I can't compare it at all, but when I read up on the symptoms, I was convinced, I was absolutely convinced I was going through early menopause, and it freaked me out. And then I kind of started some mental health medication, and then it kind of dimmed down a bit, and I was like, oh, okay. Not
Yeah,
yet.
no, it's not the end of the world if you know that it's natural.
Yeah.
It's just finding out from other people that, you know, anything that I went through, people have told me, oh, yes, I had that. And, you know, and that makes me feel much better because it's not nice to think you're going mad.
Yeah.
It's
Knowledge is key.
horrible.
Someone
Yes.
has just commented around that the subjects are quite taboo, like menstruation and menopause can be quite taboo and things that way, which is kind of the issue, because if the things that people are embarrassed about or find as something that are difficult to talk about is usually where the inequalities lie the most. So we kind of need to speak about things to see how it affects people.
I wish it was spoken about more, because when I was convinced that I was going through it, like early menopause, like it's not common, but it's not massively uncommon either. And I felt like I was broken, like my body had failed in a way. Whereas really, if it happens, it's going to happen. It might start early, it might start really late. Like I know some people who didn't go through menopause until like 70, 80 years old.
Yeah.
And then some people who at the age of kind of my age, around 25 and 30, it's not spoken about. And it's that horrible feeling of, I don't know who I can talk to, if I can talk to anyone. If I talk to them, are they going to be accepting? Are they going to mock me? Are they going to brush it off? Like, I wish it was spoken about more. Like, I have endometriosis. If anyone watching doesn't know what that is, it's where the material that sheds from your uterus every month, material similar, just grows wherever it wants in your body, and it normally wraps itself around your organs. And similar to having a period every month, it sheds from your organs, and it's very painful. It has been found in some men as well, extremely rare, but it has happened. You can get it in your brain, your spine, your lungs, mostly around kind of your stomach area. But whenever I speak about that to people, they think it's specifically related to periods, whereas it's not, and so they don't want to talk about it. And then I feel quite lonely in that sense, because it happens, the pain mostly happens during my menstruation, so when I'm having my period. And if I say to someone, oh, I'm in extreme pain right now with my stomach, they immediately go, oh, women's issues, no, I'm out of the room, checking out. And it's just like, but thankfully the people I work with, my manager kind of confessed in me that she has endometriosis. 2 other women on our team have endometriosis, and they also have polycystic ovaries. So I was like, so do you like talk about it? Like, yeah, we talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
When it happens, like we sync up at some points as well in the year as well. And I was just like, it's a huge relief, because my previous workplace was mostly men.
Yeah.
And there was definitely, like, I didn't even attempt to kind of, I was just like, oh yeah, I've got a disease in my body.
That can be quite fun though. If you know that they're going to find it really awkward, that's really fun.
It is
for a really
actually.
long time.
Yeah.
But
I used to do that to tease my brother. I used to randomly be like, "Oh, I'm having period pains," and it's like, "Oh, that's so gross," and I'd be like, "Deal with it."
I was the same, like growing up. Most of my friends are male, like so. Growing up, most of my friends are male, and it started like I have really bad period pains and I can faint and things from them. And it used to start where like I'd be like, oh, I've got really bad period pain, and they'd be like, oh, I don't want to know.
Yeah.
But by about a year in, 2 years in, when I was like 15, 16, they'd be like, do you need painkiller? Do you need drink? What do you need? Like they'd got over it by then, and I think that's probably the better way to do it. Like the more it's talked about, the more people just see it as normal, which it is.
Exactly.
Like, we also don't tend to have as much shame around like male issues.
Is it
Like
52%
my school talked about all sorts. They discussed all sorts. I always remember we all had to sit down while they discussed things about like wet dreams and morning erections, but nobody ever set the boys down and discussed periods.
No.
Like it's a very strange way that we look at things.
I think my primary school touched on it with the boys, but yeah, wasn't much.
Oh, I just remember science textbooks.
Yeah.
A little bit portion of menstruation in the reproductive system chapter, class 8 and class 10. Not more than that.
Yeah,
In
we had
school.
like a sex ed like lesson. So like the
That's
guys
nice.
learn from the girls things and the girls from the guys.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you have that where you are, but yeah, we had that.
Yeah,
We
a lot of places still like send the guys off while they teach girls about periods, which is really irritating because then like years later they say stupid things like, well, can't you just stop while you're at school, and you want to smack them in the face. So then like really what they need to do is sit everyone down and like discuss things.
Yes,
Yeah,
we
or
really do.
yeah, or how they think where we put our pets when you have like a pet when you're in your period, like where you put it.
So
Yeah.
much shame around that. It's ridiculous.
I remember you'd always take someone with you to put the hand dryer on, so that while you're like unwrapping tampons and like menstrual pads, no one can hear it. It's like, hang on a minute. Almost everyone in this room does the same thing every month. Why are we pretending like it doesn't exist?
Yeah. Yeah. In my time, it was not like that. We didn't have like a blower or something, but yeah, you had like a friend who would go with you, and I had like a friend. We were like on the same cycle, so like we would go like like together, and it was like this normal. I mean, like we were like a girls group, so it was like, oh, do you have a pad or do you have not? Oh, here is one. I mean, I even helped like a girl who was like on her first period in middle school or something, and she was like at her dad's house and not at her mom. So that's like girls have to help girls.
I see. I was quite lucky. My mum's quite open about things, and like my brother's a lot older than me. But I always remember my grandma coming round and trying to sneak like tampons at my mum in front of my brother, so my brother wouldn't see. And my mum just loudly shouted my brother over and asked him to put them in the bathroom and handed them to him. And was just like, I'm not doing that in this house. Like, that's not how we do things. So it was like, that wasn't really an issue. But like school, it sort of is. Instead of like girls all like banding together when everyone's going through the same problem, everyone sort of goes against each other, don't they? And nobody really helps. So.
It's very hush
I
hush.
remember, so it was in sixth form and we were in the art room and one of the girls was going around asking everyone if they had like a tampon. And I don't know why, but it was such a relieving moment for someone to ask me if I had a tampon, because it's like, someone else is acknowledging that other people have periods. And they're acknowledging, like, it's like, oh my God. Like, I know I'm not the only one, but someone's like openly admitted that they're on their period and they needed the tampon. And from that day forward, I always, in my bag, carry tampons and sanitary pads. So that if anyone ever needs to ask me, and I've had it before where I've been in the women's toilets and someone's kind of gone, hey, does anyone have like a tampon or anything? And I've been like, ha ha ha, come to the rescue. And so
I have a
now
little
in my
sign in my
bathroom,
house.
I have a box that sits on the windowsill that has like tampons and sanitary towels and things in, and it's basically a case of if you need one, you take it. Which I picked up. So at the YouTube space in London, all of their toilets, regardless of which toilets you go into, they all have a box full of sanitary products.
In my house, I do. I keep like a box on like the windowsill with like a note, just been like, take one if you need one. Don't ask.
Just don't.
It should be free. It should be free, or at least
It
cheap,
should.
so cheap that anyone could buy it, no matter how much money they're making.
Tampons are classed as a luxury item in England. Jaffa cakes are not, though. So.
Oh yeah, it's the same in Canada too.
Yeah, so if you learn how to like stop natural bodily functions with Jaffa cakes, please let me know.
Gross.
I mean, they have sponge in them.
No.
Do not use a Jaffa cake. Do not.
Yeah, the chocolate's really
Do not
messy.
endorse this.
Don't. That's how you get infections.
Yeah, but they're not a luxury item.
They're not a luxury.
Essential, but tampons luxury, like.
Yeah. That's what I always think about on a night out. Yeah, I'll get a box of tampons for me and the guys.
Yeah, exactly. Treat yourself.
Anyway, right, we were coming near to the end of our session, so we're going to move on to our last topic, which is sex, relationship, and consent. So we're going to be discussing what that's like as a dyspraxic person. So if that's not your thing, then now is a good time to sign off. But if you're okay with that, then do stick around. So here we are, sex, relationships and consent. I think this is a really important topic, especially when we have a disability that affects social understanding and picking up on social cues and things like that. And our understanding of body communication and things like that. Would anybody like to start the conversation? It's a difficult one to start on, I know. Just throw you in the deep end there a little bit. I think for me, the most important one is consent, and understanding consent across all platforms, whether that's face-to-face, online, through text message, through video, things like that. Being dyspraxic doesn't automatically give you consent to other dyspraxic people. This is something we've had to discuss quite a few times within our social groups and things like that, within our Facebook groups. People reserve the right to say no, and just because you have the same disability doesn't mean you're more entitled to them. But in general, I think the most important thing is no does mean no. No doesn't mean I'm not too sure, or maybe that person might be thinking that, but unless they say that, it's a no. And I think it's important.
I would even argue it's always a no until you hear an affirmative yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Unless it is a confident yes. Like it's an enthusiastic yes.
Enthusiastic,
and it's
not
hard.
So
you can always say you're uncomfortable. You can always say no, I'm not up for that. Yeah, that's the most important part. It doesn't matter how serious a relationship you are in with that person. That is always the key ground rule.
And it's respecting people's no as well.
Yeah.
People aren't saying no because they want to annoy you or bug you or, you know, weaponize or anything. It generally just means no. And it could be that perhaps there was a lack of communication that has caused the no, in which case the communication needs to be discussed. It could be other issues. There could be body issues as well. I know with myself, I quite often have really bad low self-esteem, which doesn't make me feel attractive. And so the idea of, you know, participating in consensual sex sometimes makes me feel uncomfortable, unless the other person is making me feel 100% like they worship me, basically. You know, that they respect me and they, you know, fully respect my voice and my choices in my body, then it's probably not a yes. And that's okay. It's respecting people's no as well. It's not taking that to heart. Like, it's not nice when someone says no, because you could feel disheartened yourself, like, oh gosh, what's wrong with me? Why is it a no? What have I done? Have I done something wrong? And everything's running through your head. That is difficult. But it's important to kind of take a breath, take a step back. Right, how do I manage this situation? Because
you've put that in a much kinder way than I would.
But it's, you know, it's like I've been told no to before, and that there's been times where I've been like, oh gosh, have I done something wrong? And I've kind of felt hurt by it, because you're like, why is it a no? But then I still have to respect that it's a no.
Yeah.
Just because I want the answer to be yes doesn't mean it's going to be yes. And if it is not a yes, then it's still a no at the end of the day.
We also had a question a while ago about like the physical aspects of sex and if dyspraxia impacts that at all. And like, I'd probably just go on the saying of, you don't have to do anything you don't want to at any point ever with anyone. So just don't do things you don't want to do and do things you do want to do. Same with like a lot of this sort of thing comes from like porn and things. That's not sex anyway. Nobody acts like that in sex anyway. So if you're looking at things like porn and thinking, I can never do that, nobody can. It's filmed a certain way. Nobody does this. So don't worry. Just do what makes you happy and ignore everybody else.
And there's more than one sort of way to express intimacy and experience intimacy. So that's really the bottom line there.
I mean, sex doesn't have to be penetrative to be considered a sexual act. Say that again?
Be creative.
Be creative, yeah. Like, work with your partner on what kind of works for you, especially if hypermobility is quite a big aspect. I know for me, I struggle with certain aspects of sex, but so long as I communicate that with my partner where, okay, that's not going to work today, we need to try this instead, or actually I need to limber up a little bit, I need to do a couple of stretches beforehand, don't be afraid to do that, because, you know, it's all about your comfort at the end of the day. If you're uncomfortable and you're in pain, it's probably an idea to stop and rethink. You know, you need to be able to communicate, and communication is the most important thing in any relationship. Even in like platonic relationships, that's what I'm thinking of. Non-romantic relationships.
Yeah.
You know, it's all about communicating with people and not being. It can feel robotic to say, "I don't think you've understood me very well. Can we rephrase this?" It doesn't feel natural to say that, but the more comfortable you get with saying things like that, the more natural it then eventually becomes. Like I use that in my language a lot now, where I don't think I've understood what you're asking, and I feel silly for not quite understanding it, so can we just go over that again, and then if I explain it to you, and then you can tell me whether or not I've got it. And you know, that's the same with sex and relationships as well, because in the bedroom things get messy, they get ugly, things are kind of, you know, you've got arms and legs everywhere, and it's just like, what is happening? You know, things can happen very quickly. I would just say slow down, take things slowly. And then as you become more confident, because with a new partner as well, things aren't great to start off with in the sex department. You have to learn each other's bodies, learn what each other is comfortable with, and what each person is capable of, and then just taking it from there.
And also, if you're with anybody, if you're with anybody who isn't happy that you don't want to do certain things, or isn't happy about your making a stance of what you enjoy and what you don't enjoy, leave them. And just leave.
Yes, there. Get out of there.
There'll always be more men or women or whatever your preference may be. And and I think as women too, we absorb in like the places we grow up in and the movies we watch and the culture we absorb. We really absorb this pressure to always be pleasing other people.
Yes.
And it's in this particular department, we need to rebel against it.
In most departments, let's rebel.
I'm just going to bring up this comment. This comment really stuck out to me. Just want to say that any female with an obvious disability or impairment is at risk of being taken advantage of in a relationship by certain individuals. 100%. Unfortunately, it's one of those things you hear about in the news, and often it doesn't end very well at all. This would be another situation where I would say learn your rights in the law. Learn to be proactive on how you kind of present yourself. But a lot of the time, unfortunately, predators are very good at what they do. They know exactly what to say. It's never your fault. If you've been taken advantage of, it's not because, you know, you've been too relaxed or too open. You've trusted in someone. And as humans, that's what we do. We trust people. We like to trust people. And unfortunately, there are people out there who take advantage of that. Unfortunately, there's always going to be people like that. In an idealistic world, that would never happen. I think, I don't know if anyone uses it, and it's a bit of a kind of hit and miss whether or not people like it, but TikTok has taught me a lot about consent and red flags and dangers within relationships and things like that, which is a place I would have never thought I'd have learnt those things. A lot of those videos are then uploaded to Instagram. So if you don't like TikTok, then you can find them on Instagram as well. But I would say look up online red flags, things that you might be able to point out. There's only so far you can protect yourself, because unfortunately you're not always going to know. They're good. They know exactly what to say. They know exactly how to react to you. They reflect what you do, and it's difficult. But I think if you have friends or you see someone who you think might be taken advantage of, this is something I've done in the past where I pretend to be someone's friend. If I think someone's being followed or harassed, I pretend to be their friend. And every single time that man is then run off. So it's, you know, being a little bit, it can be quite dangerous sometimes. So obviously be a bit proactive on the situation. But I'd say the most important thing is to learn things like red flags,
Yes.
and research what a healthy relationship is.
Mm.
Unfortunately, you're not always going to be able to protect yourself from those things, but you know, if you have family and friends that you think might be being taken advantage of, say something.
I'd also add as well, you aren't being particularly taken advantage of because you have a disability either. Men will be out, or not men or women, but mainly men, will be out looking for people to take advantage of. So don't blame yourself, it's because I have a disability. No, it's because they chose to take advantage of someone that day.
Yeah.
It is not because of you or anything you've done. They may have chosen you because of a disability, but that's not your issue. The only way this has happened is because that person has woke up that day and decided to do what they're going to do. You have no effect on that, and which can be quite a scary thought, really. Similar situations of like people who study domestic violence, like counsellors who work with people with domestic violence are actually no less likely to experience it in their personal lives. So even like knowing the signs, knowing the symptoms, knowing the red flags isn't necessarily going to protect you. And why that can seem scary, it's also on the other side really important to know it's really not your fault. There's nothing that you can do about that. So please don't think it's on you because of a disability at all. It's not. It's on them.
This is a good comment, having a safe word. Me and my partner have safe word sounds, if that makes sense. So we make a sound to one another. Well, it's kind of a word. We say "shwi." It's weird. And we use that as our way of giving consent. But we say it just randomly in passing as well, but we use it as like our safe word. And if that has a particular tone to it, like a "oh, shwoo," then that means no. Or if it's not done in like a really enthusiastic, full of energy way, then it's not 100% yes. Safe words don't have to be words. They can be sounds. They can be gestures, hand movements. It could be like to tap out, that kind of thing. I think that it's a really important thing to have, because sometimes you don't have the energy or the mental capacity to say, because you don't want to upset the other person as well. This is why I use a sound, because I struggle with verbalizing sometimes. I think that's the autistic side of me. I go mute when I get extremely stressed, like I will not say a word, but I can make sounds. So I think it's really important to have a safe word, sound, gesture, things like that, because you know that you're being respected by the other person and that you're respecting them. But yeah, I think has anyone else had any experience with safe words and things like that?
Keep it simple. That's all I really add.
Yeah. Get the hell off me tends to work quite well too.
Get off me.
Yeah.
Or just Batman. Yeah, or just talk like when you're busy, and then maybe like in a gentle way or something, if it is not that rough. But yeah,
a little strange, but I always hate. Have you ever seen like on films and things where people like have sex and then afterwards the man turns to the woman and goes, "Did it hurt you?" And you think, you should know this, you were there. It really stresses me out, because you see it's so common in so many films and so many things that you see, and you go, "Hang on, what? How is that not a discussion during?" So keep talking.
Talking of films. Films make you think that as soon as you've had sex, you can get up and walk off and do whatever. In my own personal experience, sex is messy. You don't just get up and walk off. There is a cleanup crew that is necessary. But also, like, because I have hypermobility with my legs and my hips, I have to lie there for quite a while and like stretch my hips out and, you know, like roll from side to side so that my legs are good again. Like, I can't just get up and walk off. I'll wobble and fall onto the floor like a jelly blob. Which I know everyone just wants to hear all about, but but it's not like, take your time after. Aftercare is very important. Checking in on your partner. Was everything okay? Is there anything I needed to do that was different? You know, because again, sometimes you don't always communicate perfectly well, you know, during and things like that. So aftercare is, I think, really important as well. You know, what went well? What was great? Okay. Right, so we are 15 minutes overdue. I think we've gone through most things now, but if anyone has any additional questions they want to ask quickly before we head off. Otherwise, thank you so much for joining the live stream. If you've only just recently joined and you missed some of the beginning, don't worry, this video is available instantly as soon as we finish, which is available on YouTube. I will also share it in a few other places. But thank you so much for coming and watching us today. And if you are a dyspraxic woman or identify as non-binary, you can join our Facebook group. Let me just ping up there you go. You can follow us on Twitter as well using the same tag. And we also have an Instagram. All right, let's just see. Wonderful. So thank you everyone for your time, and we will now all say goodbye. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.